Welcome to the Caro-Kann's starter set. If you want to start playing this opening today, this is the video for you. I decided to make this video to give you a simplified introduction to the opening, going over the three most common variations: the exchange, the advanced, and the classical variations of the Caro-Kann defense. So by the end of this video, you will be able to play the Caro-Kann as black yourself and get some wins in your games. So let's take a look at the opening. We're going to play this as the simplest way possible. So the Caro-Kann defense starts when your opponent plays the move e4 as the first move and you reply by playing c6. The idea of this move is to prepare the advancement of the d-pawn here on the center of the board. So your opponent's going to play d4 and grab the center, you're going to play d5. That was your plan all right from the start, right? You play this move here to prepare the advancement, and from here the opening can branch out into three different variations. Your opponent can take the pawn, which is the exchange variation, they can advance, which is the advanced variation, or they can try to defend this pawn, which is the classical variation. We're going to go over the three variations in a very simple way so you can start playing this opening today. The first one we're going to go over is the exchange variation, which is the easiest and simplest one to play. And here we're just going to recapture with our c-pawn. That was the idea right from the start. We play this move to prepare the advancement, and in case your opponent takes, you recapture and you have a central pawn. And this is a very symmetrical position. You just have this open file, your opponent has this open file, actually semi-open files, and we're going to play along these lines. Your opponent is going to develop and you're going to do the same thing. Easy and simple development here. You're going to develop your knight to c6, trying to attack the central pawn from white. And from here, white can play some different moves, but the most common one is knight to c3, also developing very quickly. We're going to play bishop to g4. We want to develop this bishop before closing the pawn chain here. Closing this pawn chain here. And this bishop is pinning the knight to the queen, which is very important in this position. Here, if your opponent breaks the pin, we're going to play e6. Now we are giving some support to our central pawn and closing our pawn structure here, our pawn chain. If opponent castles, we're going to develop the bishop. Very simple development here, developing the bishop, the knight, castling very quickly. This is the main idea, very simple moves, developing all the pieces. It's an easy game for black. White, if white starts to attack our bishop over there, h3, we're just going to drop the bishop back. We don't want to exchange pieces so early here. And if they keep attacking, you just drop it even further. You can even play h6 here to have some escape square just in case, but that's probably not going to happen. Your opponent's going to keep developing bishop to e3. You play your knight out, keep developing simple moves. And after a move like, let's say like a3, you're just going to castle and you have all your pieces developed. All your pieces are in the game. Some moves to continue here are probably playing this move here, a6, to prevent any infiltrations here. In case your opponent tries to move the knight, you can bring this rook to the semi-open file and try to use this imbalance you have to your favor. If your opponent continues attacking here, just drop it back. So you have a really good game here. Of course, your opponent might go for a different move here. Instead of moving the knight, they might play something more aggressive like c4. And if they go for that, we're just going to continue to our plan, which is developing the pieces quickly. We can overprotect this pawn in the center. Remember that this is a move that we play in this position anyway, so we're just playing this move a little bit earlier. If your opponent goes for the knight development, we're just going to pin the knight again. Same moves, same developing moves. In case they trade the pawns, we just recapture with the knight. This move here is very interesting. They're attacking our pawn, but we don't really mind that very much. We're going to see why. We're just going to trade here, because now they cannot recapture with the queen, they have to recapture with the pawn, leaving them with double isolated pawns. So they have an isolated pawn here, double isolated pawn in this position. So the pawn structure for white here is terrible. It's very bad for white to castle king side or queen side here. It's either way is just really bad. The pawn structure is very bad. Here we're going to play e6 to protect this knight that was hanging. If white goes for the capture, we don't mind that very much. We keep developing. In this case here, we can take this pawn actually, take the central pawn here. And if white develops the bishop here, checking our king, we can recapture, we can capture the bishop. And after the queen recapture, we can move on and offer a queen trade here. Queen to d7. If white takes, we can take back with the king. It doesn't matter here. This is an end game. We don't want to castle anyway. We can quickly develop our pieces here and start an attack against white. If white takes, we just take back. We have here an easier game. Our king is more centralized. White's not really good here. This position is good for us. And it's very simple, but it's a more aggressive move that we can go for. But what if your opponent doesn't play the exchange variation? What if they go for the advanced variation by playing e5? Well, here, again, we have some very simple developing moves, but I want you guys to remember, after your opponent plays e5, you can go ahead and play c5. You're going to be counterattacking the base of the pawn chain, forcing your opponent to react and playing a move like this to defend the pawn. That's probably what they're going to do. They're going to play c3 to defend the pawn. And in this case, you're just going to develop your knight and your pieces the same way we learned in the exchange variation. It's not going to be very different. Opponent's going to play knight to f3. You play bishop to g4, pinning the knight again. They're going to try and break the pin. And then you close your pawn chain the same way. The moves are very similar. You just can't develop your knight here because now the pawn is controlling this square, but we're going to develop the knight to a different square in this situation. After white castles, we can develop our knight. In this position here, we can develop it to e7 because the other square is not available. Opponent might try to keep the bishop away, but in this case right here, it's actually good for us to trade because when we take this knight, we're actually removing one defender from this pawn right here. So now we're going to trade c takes d4, and after c takes d4 again, now we're going to work against this pawn in the center. We're going to attack the base of the pawn chain. And we have already one piece attacking it. We're going to think about moves like this one, for example, attacking the pawn and attacking this pawn right here, making it hard for this bishop to develop, right? So it's going to be very difficult for white to develop that bishop. We can also play this move, again, attacking this pawn one more time. This is a typical move that we can go for here. We could continue this position here, for example, by playing queen to b6, attacking this pawn right here, and also attacking the central pawn. White has to respond to that. There are some ways they can do that. And if they move the bishop away, we can go ahead and grab this pawn. So this is a very typical situation where white might go for this move. Undefending the pawn, we can go ahead and take the pawn with our queen. White has to move the knight to protect the rook that was attacked in the corner. And then in this position, we can play knight to f6, attacking the central pawn. Now we have two pieces attacking the pawn, the knight and the queen, just one defender. They have to do something about this. And they're going to do something about this. They're going to attack our queen. And here comes the concept of danger levels. We have to protect our queen. We have no time to take the pawn. So we have to move a queen away. In this case, we're going to take the pawn on a2. And then white's probably going to take the pawn on b7 with the rook. We're going to develop the bishop and prepare to castle in this position. If white tries to force a trade, we just drop the queen back. We don't want to trade the queens in this position. And if white insists on trading, in this case moving right here, we can actually trade in that position, because after the rook takes, we can actually play this move right here and take this pawn. In case they take back, we take here, hitting the queen and hitting the bishop. So it's a great position for us. If they continue by playing some other moves, let's say rook here to the center, we can go ahead and castle, and it's a great position for black. Okay, of course, they don't have to go for that necessarily. In case we play queen here, they can go for the knight move and play knight to c3 instead of developing the bishop, keeping this pawn defended, so we cannot take it. But guess what? We can take this pawn in this case. The pawn in the center, they cannot hang to defend all those things. So we can take with the queen, forcing, encouraging some trades here. And in case white takes with the queen, we take back with the knight. Bishop to e3, we trade. with check, forcing white to take with the pawn, exposing white's king. So the pawn structure of white here is very, very bad. We can continue playing this game by developing here the knight. We can go out with this bishop, castle, or even, it's not necessary to castle here, not necessary, but you can do that. So this is a typical way to play this position. Okay, this covers the advanced variation. So now we went over the exchange and the advanced variation. Now we have to go over what happens if white plays the classical variation with knight to c3. And in this position, we are going to be the one taking the pawn. So we're going to take the pawn in the center. White's probably going to recapture with the knight. That's why they played the knight move in the first place. And here, the most common line, the main line here is actually playing this bishop out, but this is a very complex line. It doesn't actually end up well for black. So I like to play a simple move here, knight to f6. And more often than not, white's going to take the central knight. If they don't, you can take it yourself. So if they take here, you just recapture with the e-pawn, opening the lines for your bishops, and you have very easy development here. You can develop your bishops to the diagonals very easily here. You can castle very quickly. This is a very easy position to play. White's probably going to develop some pieces here, knight to f3, you play bishop to d6, developing your pieces and preparing to castle. Bishop to d3, you can castle, white's going to do the same thing. And after that, you can play bishop to g4, very typical move here in this position for the Caro-Kann. We have seen this move being played in the 3 variations, exchange, advanced, and classical. If your opponent kicks your bishop away here, we're going to drop it back. There's no reason for us to trade here. After a move, let's say like c3, defending the central pawn there and having this very strong pawn chain, we're going to play knight to d7, developing our knight here. After, let's say, rook e1, you can play rook e8. If opponent goes for the trade, you feel very happy to trade here and take control over the open file. And then we take back with the queen. After a move, let's say bishop to e3, you can bring your rook to this semi-open file, and you have a very great game for black here. And this is a very good position for you. So it's a very simplified introduction to the opening. This is basically the starter kit. If you want to play the Caro-Kann Defense, you have this starter kit. You can play against the 3 most common variations. You can achieve some very reasonable positions with all your pieces developed in the opening, and you can have a great middle game from there. Okay, so thank you very much, guys, for watching this video. Like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you like the video. And as always, I see you guys in the next one.